are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate? Before I get started, again, thank you for the opportunity. And I've been following tremendous talks all day, and I can't wait for tomorrow as well. And I really hope everyone's safe and well, especially during COVID times. So let me get started in terms of what I have to say today is really more around accelerated convergence. I know, like, all of you must have had, great opportunity to hear amazing speakers, industry experts. I'm definitely not a domain expert when it comes to construction industry and real estate and built environment. But the point of view that I'm planning to bring here is really, what does it even mean where we are? And then what does it mean going forward? Everyone talks about future, but really what exactly is future? So basically, we're talking about everything is converging. I think one thing that COVID has actually shown right now is there is no stack anymore. And more than ever, we know that the future is faster than we think. I mean, we always generally think about future in terms of this staggered way of month to month, week to week, year to year. But really, it's happening in real time. It's happening at a pace that is beyond spinning. One thing we do know about 2020 is nothing but extraordinary. The reason I say extraordinary is because everything that we've come to know, eat, speak, live, talk, where we travel, how we travel, everything has been disrupted just because of this invisible virus that kind of came and literally overnight taken over our lives to the point that we are referring to the times before COVID as BC. It has the same connotation like the way we would have in the biblical age, where everything seems so different. And it has been extraordinary from every standpoint. It's challenging on one end to tremendous opportunity on the other end. So really, clearly what we are trying to do is we're counting down. We're literally can this year end? Can we have end of this? We of course know what's happening besides the pandemic, from political environment to, I'm right now in California, so clearly we're literally on fire in every way. And air quality, movement, everything. So one thing that we do know, what pandemic has brought to the forefront is actually put some selective pressures that have literally been building in the global economy for decades. Everything that we thought wasn't a challenge actually suddenly become a challenge because that challenge existed before COVID. So clearly, when you think about how we're literally living our lives, since whenever we went into shelter in place, is digital, right? That is the only way we know how to live. I do my yoga online. I, talk to my kids' friends, my families. I've actually attended a funeral where my grandfather passed away through Zoom. I mean, because I can't travel to India. And then I attended one of the weddings in my family, a cousin, entire traditional wedding also. And everybody from all over the world, besides the bride and groom's families, joined and celebrated the new couple via Zoom. So clearly, when you look at the amount of time we are spending through this digital medium is phenomenal. But in this chart, what specifically I want to highlight is, if you look at 2008 to 2018, of course, a couple of years of old data, what's important for you to notice in this chart is the red part, not the blue, not the white, because mobile. No one has actually expected. If someone must have asked us, hey, 10 years ago, would we live our lives on mobile? They wouldn't say no. It's just impossible. So we're literally looking at exponential growth on every level, but practically our lives are moving to online. But then going forward, we may settle for a hybrid, but I don't think we'll ever go back to the way we lived our lives before. Just look at this chart. I'm sure some of you must have seen this, going viral on the online. Is we may do whatever we do from a 24-hour clock standpoint. There's something about data that never sleeps. Where does the data come from? The data comes from devices. If you look at the number of devices that are actually getting connected at that exponential rate, which is just mind-blowing, right? I mean, just look at that. This is a minute in a day. That's how much data through all of these different platforms and every possible fashion it's getting captured and being used by algorithms to better understand us to do what we have to do. Clearly, no one has seen the growth of Zoom. That is a classic case of exponential growth. Again, if you look at the internet population, it's not the physical population of human beings. If you literally look at from 2014 to now, the global internet population is like significantly grown. Again, keyword, exponential. Everything that we're witnessing is happening at a rapid scale in a manner that it's beyond our even models. We don't even have some models to calculate what the next growth curve in a lot of these areas is going to look like, because you have to follow the S curve. It's no longer a linear curve, which is very, very important. That means in this time and day, every click, every swipe, everything that we're doing is getting captured and can also be tracked and can also reveal what the customer really wants. So key point here as we're going into, towards the end, last quarter of 2020, the summer has just literally ended, is signals. The biggest opportunity is always captured when you better understand signals, right? So I think we have that once in a lifetime opportunity to look at the signals now, because what happens from now on is going to be nothing like the way we've done before. So how do you really try to understand signals, and where are the signals coming from? Clearly, most of the signals are driven by the shifts that we've noticed because of the global pause that we've literally experienced in the last 6 months. But if you look at the digital environment, there was no pause. In fact, we were overworking in the digital environment. In the physical environment, we were actually stagnant, right? So these signals are driven by exponential technologies. Really, what does it mean is 2020 and beyond, we have to look at how do we create possible futures. It is not the future, everything is the future, but how do we create possible futures or desirable futures that make sense to us? And that's where the opportunities lie, because the greater the challenge, the greater the opportunities. So clearly, what we are talking about is how do you understand signals and what are those signals? One thing that we have learned during this entire 6 months, everyone has gone through a reflection mode, is key things are pretty much here to stay. No matter where you operate, what industry you operate, how you operate, whether you're an entrepreneur or investor, a politician or a policymaker, or even a physical construction worker, these are the key things. You have to be adaptable. Adaptability, resilience, but more than ever, the opportunity zone lies with imagination. Because what is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate? Innovation doesn't come without imagination as to what you can do, because everything we're doing right now, we have an opportunity to build from scratch. We are laying new foundations, literally speaking, and more than ever applies to construction industry. So one of the key things here is also understanding the democratization, because if you look at the technology acceleration, we talked about automation. Everyone's been talking about automation. One thing that literally got accelerated is the rate at which automation happens now. That is also thanks to COVID. Another key variable that's actually coming up is decentralized innovation. It's no longer just to innovate. We are decentralizing the way we even innovate. So the key things which are really, really important is to really look at adaptability, resiliency, imagination, democratization, and decentralized innovation. So clearly in this tech-driven world, we need to learn how to spot a signal that actually allows us to create a future, but more importantly, create a possible future that can be applicable in the near term. That's where financial opportunities also lie. So clearly, exactly when you think about decentralized innovation, everyone knows, it's the most overused term in the industry across the board. We're talking about now the fact that I can be sitting anywhere. Remote is another key concept. We're all remote. Everything we're doing is remote. That means no longer I'm prohibited to a region, a talent from the region, or investment from the region, or how I can solve the problem from one particular region. I can be sitting literally anywhere right now and still make it happen, because remember, as long as you're plugged into the internet and then connected to the right people, you can do a lot of it. So some of the key things when it comes to decentralized innovation are really looking and coming from crowdfunding, the way we are organizing competitions, and the kind of breakthroughs that are actually coming out of just organizing competition is just phenomenal. open platforms, because everything right now that we're building is for anyone to plug in, because scale for me right now is 8 billion first, and then looking at my special niche segment of population that I want to target. So open platforms allows a lot of that. We are trying to gamify everything because I cannot stare at a Zoom screen forever. I need to be in a much more immersive environment where my connections and the way I want to achieve things can happen is better. Crowdsourcing, we are tapping into the crowd like we've never done before. And of course, open source, because this is where algorithms come into play. There's so much open source. That means anyone who's plugged into the internet, their talent can come forward, because potentially I may even hire that person in the future. Would companies, again, focus only on local talent? Are they going to literally seek talent from all over the world? Because I can also save a lot of money by hiring the best talent, allow them to work remotely, and then still build what I want to build. So technically what this is doing is it is bringing non-domain experts who are basically the problem solvers, this multidisciplinary hat, which is leading to some of the interesting breakthroughs, which is very, very important, because that's going to be here to stay, regardless, even if you come out of pandemic, even if everyone's vaccinated. I think COVID is just a practice pandemic. We'll have to learn to live with a pandemic kind of an environment in our lifetime, because climate is another one that's going to come as push us more and more into this remote hybridization environment. So if you really look at some of the signal areas right now, driven by technological innovation, are really some of these areas. And you want to keep a close watch on any of these technologies, because all of them are happening at the same time, which is exactly what I mean by convergence. It is no longer me just doing DNA editing. It's no longer just me using AR and VR. It is no longer just about applying a blockchain. We are evolving all of these technologies at the same time, which is going to fundamentally alter your foundation layer on which you're going to build, how you're going to use them, what tools you're going to use, and how you're going to actually reapply that to reshaping your own industries. But what's really critical here is, of course, all of these are like awesome, they're fantastic, but what does it even mean for me? Data, data, data. I think we have to get used to embedded AI in everything we touch, do, speak, and live. AI is no longer something that's going to come as an afterthought. It's going to become ubiquitous more and more, because it's so easy to outsource to an algorithm. It is so easy because even algorithms are getting to be plug and play. Yes, there are still a lot of unknown solved problems with algorithms, but could you imagine a human sitting and sifting through 1 trillion variables and understand the context in which I'm going to bring in? So some of the latest AI technology we're dealing with is actually looking at 1 trillion variables. It is next to impossible for any human, even Einsteins of the world cannot sift through 1 trillion variables and make sense of it. So we are already pushing some of the tools and frameworks within AI that's going to power. That level of accuracy, of course, is still to be evolved, and it's going to happen regardless, but it is going to go into ubiquitous. That means every physical asset, every physical space that we touch will have a component that's going to be driven by AI, some form of intelligence driven by that. So the ubiquitous nature of AI and how it's going to like seamlessly get embedded is really critical. So clearly what we're talking about is in the 21st century, any firm, any company, any investor, any entrepreneur, any builder, any product maker is looking to gain a competitive advantage. They have to understand and play to the rules according to the information economy, no longer is the physical economy, because these rules are driven by the tech information base that is driving this next level of intelligence. Not only driving the intelligence, we're taking that intelligence and actually embedding into whatever we want to do. And that's where we're talking about connected environments and connected, IoT devices, connected blockchains, which is going to go as a plumbing layer of, how to track supply chain to everything else. But really, what does it all mean for built environment, right? One key area which I think people have to take notice, everyone talks about software, but actually the most important thing right now is to look at the material science of the materials that we actually use. So clearly AI is a given, because we're gonna apply that into the entire life cycle of managing a project, whether it's a construction company project, whether it's actually a commercial space, whether it's the way I'm gonna even decide how to invest into a commercial project. we're going to apply some form of a tool that's going to go into the entire life cycle. So it may go into back office, it may go into digital collaboration, on-site execution, it doesn't matter. There are hundreds and hundreds of use cases emerging where we're going to actually leverage AI. And I think more and more we're going to see that happening in the built environment. Clearly, robotics is just beginning to happen. In fact, if nothing has shown the promise and potential of robotics, has actually as a result of COVID, because because we can't deal with humans, we cannot touch humans, we can't be near humans, which is like almost like a crazy thought, because I love cities, and how would I even live in a city anymore when I have to at least maintain 6 to 8 feet distance? That means we are physically getting departed from each other. That means the jobs that still have to be done by humans without risking human, we are bringing in robotics in that picture. So if you actually have noticed, I'm sure it was all over the news, China has been actually using robots as sanitizer helpers. So instead of, if you go into a mall, instead of you trying to carry your own, they roam around in the cities, they roam around the streets, and all they do is like dispense your hand sanitizer. So as simple as that to very complex environments, because I can't stop construction forever. Construction is one of those areas which is very physical, labor intensive, where people have to huddle together. Can you really make them do it without risking their lives? Because a lot of unknowns still exist when it comes to COVID. We are also getting ready for another wave that's going to hit us this, fall, winter. How do we make sure that we don't stop industry, but continue? And this is where robotics come into the picture. Also with labor shortage, robots another possible solution. And there are already some companies, Japan is leading some of the pack here, like AEC is actually in their 5th generation humanoid robot. They're actually experimenting a lot with exoskeletons because they can build weights I can't. So instead of me employing only a crane to lift weights, a human can now become the superhuman and carry weights. So there are all kinds of use cases that are actually coming into play when it comes to this. Wearables is another area where we see technology is being applied. Again, there are smart boards, smart hats, smart glasses. Everything is being actually looked at in terms of how we can use in a construction environment, in a built environment, how we even manage the physical space. Because again, why do I need that hardware? Because the hardware is transmitting the information. That's where the intelligence connection really comes into play. It's like if I'm embedding AI and into the physical device, it could be a hat that automatically detects what my temperature is, what my sweat composition is. That means when the construction worker is fatigued, I can catch them before they're fatigued, and then without having to stop the work, without having to overwork my construction worker and putting their health at risk, I can still manage both worlds. So there are tremendous use cases that are actually evolving. And these are, by the way, low-hanging fruit cases. These are not super, super high-end technology either. We can use existing technology and actually create use cases that are augmenting the built environment. Of course, everyone must have talked about AR, VR. It is continuing to make headways into construction space. But especially during COVID, I've seen the kind of explosion of AR, VR. In fact, recently I attended Burning Man, because you clearly can't be in a physical desert, and that's not happening. There was an entire experience that was created virtually. So I roamed around, did things, listened to music, and looked at art, everything in a VR, AR, physical environment, 100% digital. And it just blew my mind as to how this decentralized individuals kind of ended up building an entire city and try to mimic the same experience of Burning Man into that digital realm. So the promise is just unfolding. Of course, Oculus has also recently just announced what they're doing with their next generation. So I think we're going to see a massive acceleration of virtual augmented reality coming. And of course, Apple is playing a pretty big role in the space. And construction, of course, is great. Drones, also we're beginning to look at drone adoption, right? So if you look at, compared to all other industries, the biggest adoption actually has been the construction engineering industry, because clearly we can use drones for monitoring. Now we can send them into fire zones. We can look at disaster recovery. I mean, think about right now the opportunity for prefabricated homes, because there are two kinds of refugees that are evolving, right? A climate refugee, which I've literally witnessed that in California during the evacuation process of fires. That means we're going to be evacuated one way or another. We're going to be displaced one way or another. That means we need temporary housing. temporary places of how we can quickly tackle the problems, but also it's leading to this digital nomadic lifestyle, which is more and more becoming common. That means if we want to be able to monitor from a safety perspective, from construction perspective, from surveying perspective, understanding the delays of congestion, sending them into like zones where humans can be risky, and also increasing the worker productivity. So there are so many things that you can actually do. And clearly in the construction industry, we've seen 35% increase when it comes to deployment of drones and how they've been using it. Another area from a technological standpoint driven by software is it's BIM model, which is Bim Software, which is building information modeling software. Because when you think about simulation, everything is going to will be simulated first, right? Because why would I want to spend all of the money if it's not going to work for me? I'm going to simulate the best experience from developing a blueprint to constructing it to also taking it all the way into execution. And now, because it's a software and a simulated model, I can plug in that simulated model into a 3D printer, which can probably print the house according to the specifications. So I no longer probably even need the human intervention for some of the translation that is required. So it's a highly collaborative process on how do you apply this for all kinds of projects. And clearly we're looking at planning, design, construction, operations, maintenance. But not only 3D, we are now definitely getting into like 4D, 5D, 6D modeling. And the software is going to be like even another area of opportunity on how you can use it, how you can also develop it if you're an entrepreneur. Because everything relies on data. Everything is about capturing real-time data. Everything's about applying that to a connected environment. So this is kind of like some of the areas when you look about BIM is you're looking at the information modeling can be applied to almost all of these areas of logistics to documentation to conceptual design. Again, this is where also like some of the key elements that come into play are very critical. I mentioned about like materials. One thing which is really, really important is it is not just the software, it's not just the data. We are advancing the very material, which is concrete. Look, if you think about it, everything is made of glass, steel, concrete, one way or another. Whether the printer is the one that's printing it or a human building that building, I still need materials. So there are a couple of examples that I want to give you as to where, they're still kind of early stage, but we are beginning to see some promise, and we cannot lose sight as to how we can leverage this as part of the construction process is self-healing concrete. Imagine the biggest cost factor and biggest money that is made today right now is fixing things that are broken. What if you actually have self-healing concrete? Do you ever need to go back and rebuild, refix anything? You don't have to. That is going to be revolutionary, right? Also, transparent aluminum. We've been using aluminum for a long time, especially for industrial construction. We need a lot of aluminum. That means you have now glass-looking aluminum. That means I can literally have my window to be the aluminum shelter without even having to use another window, but it has the strength of steel. Just imagine the kind of the design aspects of how you can actually apply that and how we can actually use it, because this actually combines your laser technology. So that means smart materials are, smart concretes to smart materials. And is there a way those materials can be talking to machines and collecting data and actually sensing things is actually a massive opportunity of the future. Whether it's going to happen in the next 5 years in terms of mass adoption, probably not yet, but we cannot lose sight of where we're actually heading. And this is where imagination, forget about reset. There's no need to reset anything. If we have a golden opportunity to build the next, this is the time to build the next, right? And that's where it's about what is the possible future one can be engaged in. Everyone must have talked about, everybody already knows about 3D printed houses. That means we're going to develop cities which are going to be 3D printed. Mexico is already doing that. Dubai is already doing it. In fact, they're like a multi-billion-dollar kind of construction project getting lined up where they really want to do at least 30 to 40% of their building process is going to be 3D printed, if not the entire thing. Because now I have a printer through which I can inject customized materials. So there's a material development that's actually helping the way, and also the delivery mechanism, how we're going to build is also helping. So basically what we're talking about is, hey, all of this coming together, we can now aim to build smart roads. I no longer have to have this one camera capturing and then transmitting and telling me what to do. as I'm going on the road can detect what I'm doing, because this is also very useful when you think about autonomous vehicles. If you have a smart road that can possibly charge, but also is reading everything, now the car can be talking to the road and then drive the whole thing. So I'm nothing but a spectator in that equation, and which is kind of really cool, by the way. So we're talking about Jetsons is here to stay. It's not going to be going away. At the same time, it is not just the silicon based. There is a huge surge that we can actually see in eco materials. That means we are not just going forward in terms of how we can apply materials and technologies. We are going back to the way the tribals built, the way they built, which is 100% circular economy, regenerative models, and sustainable way of actually using the natural clay, using the natural bamboo, all of that. So we have these opportunities on both spectrums that even if you don't have technology, if you have deep understanding of the way our ancestors have built things, we're going to go back into these eco models and eco modes, which are going to be important, because one thing we really care about right now is we have to care about climate, we have to care about our health. Anything that we do has to support both of these in the next decade. So clearly, we are seeing that tangential evolution on both sides. So we're talking about convergence that's going to lead to smarter roads, bamboo cities, vertical cities, and most importantly, we need pollution-fighting buildings. China is already beginning to do a lot of that right now, which is pretty phenomenal. So really, when you actually think about man versus machine, I think it's man and machine, right? Again, to what degree I can augment my industry, whatever role that I'm playing, I could be coming as an entrepreneur, wanting to build the next, or I want to solve a problem which is ailing my industry in the next 2 to 3 years because there's tremendous opportunities on one end, or I want to really build a truly my possible desirable future. All of this is kind of coming together, because what's important right now is to aim what we want to do next, because we can choose what we want to do next. And that has never been the case, at least in my lifetime, and I'm sure most of your lifetimes. So COVID has given this really phenomenal opportunity where we can combine humanoid laborers to modular and prefabricated environments in the way we do construction, the 3D printing houses to smart infrastructure, but most importantly, trying to go back to a sustainable living model, an eco-friendly model where we can breathe. Because one thing that I've actually realized how important clean air, living for about a month in closed doors because of California fires, is I will do anything to breathe fresh air, anything to help reverse the climate, because otherwise we won't exist in the next decade and we're going to be ruining our planet for good. So infrastructure, construction, buildings, all of that, there's going to be a massive importance of how we build the next wave of what's to come. And I think there's tremendous opportunities. So again, signals is very important, understanding what you can do right now, what technologies are advancing and how I can apply that, both in the low-hanging fruit environment in the near term, but also like the long shots as to what is the best possible model I can build. But most importantly, how can we do it where we're not just eliminating humans, but can we augment humans so they can go do the best they can to build the best environments we can all live in. So I'll stop right there. If you have any questions, please let me know. And that's my contact information. So again, thank you all for listening. It was a long monologue, but hopefully you got something to take away today.